Well, hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about Zig and other things. And it is Tuesday, May 13, 2025. And I thought of something. I've been listening to the general news, and everybody is yelling and screaming about Trump taking this $400 million bribe in the form of a fancy airplane from Qatar. And I think I have a unique position that perhaps might everybody make everybody hate me, but I don't much like the genocide in Gaza. And Trump, who is just simply bought and sold, he took $300 million from the Adelsons in return for letting Israel break any law they want, like annex the West Bank and just take over countries from other nations and stuff. So he was totally supporting Israel from that. But now Qatar has outbid them with a $400 million bribe on the other side because Qatar funds Hamas. So I think Trump is not visiting Netanyahu in his trip to the Mideast because he's mad at him. So obviously he's waiting for Netanyahu to give him $500 million to swing that way. He's getting bribes from both sides. But this $400 million bribe from Qatar might actually move him to the right side for the wrong reason.
Yeah. Hmm.
So if you're going to be bought and sold, then you should be bought by the better people.
Yeah. Good
Those are our
point.
options.
Good point.
Yeah,
I,
well, yeah.
I will tell you the largest, at least in the past, the largest military base outside of the U.S. is in Qatar.
Yeah. And I've also just
Yeah.
heard this morning that they've put like $4 billion into American educational institutions in the last 10 years, more than any other country. And
The
with Trump,
Qatar has.
yeah,
Yeah.
And with Trump cutting all the U.S. government funding of education, are they may actually be a source of funding for our educational institutions. It's a mad world.
Yeah. I think Texas A&M is in Qatar, and Northwestern has a university in Qatar.
Yeah,
And they have a whole area there that they call University City.
yeah.
And so it's the portion where all the universities are.
And I know our community colleges and City College gets a lot of its money from foreign students, and Trump's kicking them all out and scaring them all away. So
Yeah.
really going to starve the colleges of money. So
Yeah. This is well, JD Vance many times has repeated that the professors or higher education is the enemy.
well,
If you,
I think the modern Republican Party, really all my life, the Republican Party would just like to end education entirely. All education is their enemy.
yeah, yeah. And interesting that line of the professors are the enemy. Do you know what president came up with that first?
No, I think before I was born, I suppose.
Maybe that was Nixon.
Oh, well, sure, but I would think it would go back further than that. Sure, I remember when I was a child, a popular belief was that women shouldn't go to school at all because it's a waste of money, because they're just going to have babies. And men really shouldn't go to college because all it does is make them lose their faith in God and become atheists.
Right.
Which, that is true as far as it goes. Actually, you go back home again and now you argue with your parents about all the stuff they believe and you seem to be all corrupted and everything.
Right. That evil science, it's been around chipping away at religion for thousands of years.
It has been, yeah. And it's if people just don't get this nasty education stuff, then they play along with the rules a lot better.
Exactly. Exactly.
Anyway, right, yeah,
Sam,
yeah,
wait, I
yeah,
got a sidelight here.
yeah,
Do you know that there's a city in Egypt that archaeologists were looking at about 120, 30 years ago,
yeah.
and they happened to find what's euphemistically called the dump site at the time of Jesus. And they're little scraps of paper. A lot of it has to do more with tax records and things, mundane things. But they're also early drafts of the Bible or quotes from the Bible.
Oh, well, I'm not
And
surprised because I know the Bible was just created from all the scraps that were floating around by the diet of worms, and the Catholic Church decided to what part of it they wanted to consider acceptable.
Yeah, and so you may have heard this, but the sign of the devil is, as
In Christianity, 666.
yeah, well, they found a scrap of paper where it's
Yeah.
660 and it's
Yeah.
clearly a zero and
Oh
not
yeah.
a six.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I've heard this. Yeah. There's a similar one in Islam too, which is why Salman Rushdie was getting knifed and executed. There's the thing called the satanic verses. There are verses in the Quran that you're never allowed to say.
Oh, I see.
And if you do, then you're like serving the devil or something, and you aren't even supposed to admit they exist. And he wrote a book about them, popularizing the fact that this is there. It's very much like the Christian 666. There's this scary sort of magic thing in their holy book that people are afraid to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Interesting though. So
Yeah.
so out of all those boxes, and I think there were 100 boxes that were shipped back to England because these were English archaeologists.
Yeah.
They've only gone through maybe 1-2% of what they've collected.
Yeah. And there's the
And
Gnostic Gospels too.
yeah,
I mean, yeah, that is the people. I know this is why I think fundamentalism. I remember another take that might get people mad at me. And I figured out years ago, fundamentalism is a form of idolatry. Pretending that the Bible is perfect and infallible is pretty much forbidden by what's in the Bible. I mean, you've taken some random stuff and decided it's perfect. It's totally unreasonable. If you actually learn church history, you have to accept, how this really happened. It's three or four completely different religions jammed together, which is why there are several contradictory creation myths. And it's assembled from all these fragmentary documents that were floating around that are derivative from the religions around them. And, if you actually understand what's going on, you can have a realistic appraisal of how valuable is this book. And I'd say, it's somewhat less valuable than the I Ching, but like Bhagavad Gita. These books all have some value, but none of them are worth saying they're 100% perfect and distinct from the others.
yeah. Well, we started with one book, right, and one God, and now we have 50,000 different religions.
I don't think we ever started from one God. I think every
Well,
tribe,
I'm sorry, Christians.
no, that's the point. The Christians did not at all. The Christians were a heretical sect of Jews with a false Messiah, but then they formed into several competing interpretations of this. The big schism being between Peter and Paul, and then it fragmented much more over the next century until there were all these contradictory books and sects and traditions floating around, just like there are now.
Yeah.
Then they had battles and
Okay.
wiped each other out and burned each other's books and tried to unify. But it's, I think it's never been any different than this. Every little tribe has their own version.
Well, I think the best one is the Mormon religion, which started in the early 1820s, 30s. And what's interesting is now they have 127 different sects, if you will. There's one main one, obviously,
Yeah.
but there are 127 different splinters. And something I just learned is uh, that Joseph Smith, who started the Mormon religion, he was killed in Missouri,
Hmm.
where the Garden of Eden is. And his son, one of his sons, was to take over the religion. But Brigham Young steered and took over and brought everybody to Utah. But the Brigham Young son religion still exists today in Missouri.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
Or I'm
yeah,
wait, Missouri, Mississippi, which Missouri,
yeah,
Missouri.
that's the way they always has been. The idea
Yeah,
that it
interesting, huh?
what surprised me, of course, is computer languages. The thing actually that I remember when I was in learning this in this like 72
Yeah,
discussion at that time, which computer language will win? Will it be Fortran or COBOL
right.
or BASIC? Then we'll have the one language and we'll all just use that from now
The
on.
one, the one true language.
Yeah, yeah. And I blame her if you say it should be BASIC. No, it should be Fortran. And man, instead it's just splintered into hundreds of them.
Right. We have over 1,000 languages, don't we?
A lot. And
Yeah.
it's funny.
Okay.
That's why I thought that's what I actually chose for the title. I thought it was interesting. I came across a YouTube channel from a guy that does all these technical things, and he decided to, let me get the name of it here to quote him. It is Dave's Garage. And he does,
Oh, yeah.
and he decided to find out what the fastest programming language was.
Yes. Yeah.
And it was very interesting. He wrote like a GitHub specifying you have to calculate, find all the prime numbers using this algorithm up to 1 million, and then see how many times you can do that in a second. And I was very surprised by the answers. And he did stop to answer. My immediate answer was, of course, assembler. He said, no, assembler is not even in the top five. He said, now you might think it would have to be because in principle, everything can be an assembly, but the challenge is to actually write code in that language. And writing code in assembler is not as efficient as writing it in more efficient language because the things that make it fast are complicated and you can't write them by hand. And so, can you guess what the fastest language is?
Uh, no.
Yeah, I would have guesses. The fastest language by far is Zig, which I never heard of before. It has over
Zig?
10, yeah, it was able to do this job over 10,000 times in a second. And number two is Rust at only 5,000. And number three and four are C and C++ down at 15 or 1600. So Zig is like 8 times faster than C and C++. And Rust is 3 times faster than C and C++. I was very surprised by these findings.
Who uses Zig, or do you know anything about Zig?
I never heard of it before.
Yeah.
I may look into it. Apparently, it's the great thing. Patch meow.
Wow.
And
Huh.
I thought Rust was slower than C, and they were trying to make it as fast as C, but he finds in practice it's 3 times faster than C. So, and I think the point is, um, you have to use sophisticated. The question is, how easy is it for the programmer to program? The one thing I know about Rust is for like the last 5 years, when they asked developers what language they would rather use, like 95% of them all say they'd rather write Rust than whatever they're doing, because it really is much easier to write good code in Rust.
I see. I see. Huh.
And
S-
and anyway, I didn't know it was also faster. That's nice to know. Anyway,
Yeah. So the person's name, Dave's Garage, his name is Dave Plummer. He worked at Microsoft for 30 years.
mhm.
And his claim to fame was he is responsible for the activation code
Oh,
in Windows, that 25
uh,
key number that everybody hates to type in.
well, we all had
And
that one memorized with XJMPP for Windows XP. There was the
yeah,
one.
something like that. Right, right, right. And what's interesting is that he needed some padding in the calculations for the key.
Yeah.
So I believe, and he'll talk about this in one of his videos, but he took the code for DOS, and I think it was DOS 1.1, 1.0, 2.0, something like that. And he flipped it around backwards, and he used that as padding to fill out, some fields that he needed.
People do that a lot in cryptography.
Yeah, and interesting, Bill Gates watches his videos or has watched some
Yeah.
of his videos and responded to him and said, Dave, let me correct you on something.
No, that's good. Well, you know what's strange to me, you might know, you're closer to Microsoft than me, is
Yeah.
massgrave.dev. Massgrave.dev has been handing out pirate licenses for every Microsoft product for about a year now, and it totally works. Not just Windows every version, but Office every version, and Microsoft doesn't seem to ever do anything about it. It's
Hmm.
amazing. You can just download any Microsoft product, activate it for free at massgrave.dev, and
That's interesting.
I found it very useful because I was using trial versions, and after a while they reboot every hour and irritate my students.
Right.
So now they don't do that anymore.
So I will tell you, Microsoft, I think this was for Windows 7, was
Yeah.
finding mass activations someplace in the middle of Kansas.
Yeah.
And Microsoft thought, what the heck is going on here? Why in Kansas? Why are there well, I wouldn't say millions, but why are there tens of thousands of Windows activations?
Well,
And what it was people are stealing keys. And you had 5 attempts, I think, to use the key. And so they would test one of the keys, and the hackers or whoever the thieves were using an IP address in Kansas.
yeah, it reminds me of a few years ago. there was some place, I think maybe in Kansas, where all these people kept going because it was the default location. If they didn't know where you were, it um,
Yeah.
would go to like the geometric center of America, which was that place. So people
Maybe it
would,
was the same thing.
yeah,
Maybe,
so
yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, anyway, I got
What
some.
else you got, Sam?
Well, Trump administration now wants to end habeas corpus, which is
Oh, yes, we
just
should.
just mind-boggling, which just means we're back to like medieval kings off with his head. I mean, they can just accuse anybody of anything, punish them. No, they have no appeal. There's no court hearing or anything. So they can just do anything to anybody.
Yeah.
Uh, hopefully
Well,
it won't go
didn't
through.
yeah, hasn't I just caught a story that Trump has I guess eased the tax burden with China or the tariffs
He
with
lowered the
China?
tariffs. Yeah, he lowered the tariffs down to 30%, arbitrarily. Because I think people are complaining that this is going to destroy the economy. Although apparently even a 30% is pretty much going to harm the economy too.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
And he promised to lower the price of things. That's why it's incredible to me. Republicans are in lockstep with the largest tax increase in American history. It shows that there's not one of them that has any principles about anything. Not the debt, not our alliances, not anti-communism, not anti-tax. They just don't believe in anything. They'll just do whatever it takes to stay in power.
yeah, yeah.
Anyway, so here's another great idea. There's a report from the National Cybersecurity Training Academy telling us where to get new cybersecurity talents. Can you guess?
Russia.
Prisons. They want us to train convicts in cybersecurity.
Okay.
Well, it doesn't. And they say studies show that training people in cybersecurity causes them to get a job and have less recidivism. I say, well, yes, it might have that effect. I can think of some other effects it might have, though. So anyway, I'm not sure that's the optimum population to be recruiting from.
Well, years ago, the FBI hired somebody who was a very talented counterfeiter, and his name was Art. And if you want the book, it's The Art of Money. And Art was just so talented at faking currency, right? And he was able to get the little strips. I don't think money has those anymore. Those old strips that would change colors. And what he was using was automobile paint to do that strip. Anyway, he
Yeah.
was very good at it. The FBI finally found him. They arrested him. And then they said, you want to work for us. They brought him to Washington, D.C. He was still under arrest. And he lectured to the FBI and literally got a standing ovation on his talk on counterfeiting and how to detect counterfeiting.
Yeah.
So he was up in his hotel room where he was being guarded. And in his room, again, he's still, in custody. And so the FBI agents came in, they were going to take him out to lunch or whatever, dinner. And they looked, and here he was counterfeiting. And he said, Art, why are you doing this? And he said, well, you guys don't pay enough.
I know. I mean, this happened
So
so.
back to prison he went.
Yeah, yeah. They happened with, I think, Max Vision. They,
Yeah,
they, they. This is the problem. I mean, and it happened really with Kevin Mitnick too. I mean, Kevin Mitnick kept hacking things until he went to prison, and afterwards he said, it was an addiction, like drugs. I couldn't stop,
yeah.
but I could see, I'm going to get caught. Everybody hates me, but it's so much fun. And so, anyway, so
There is an element of fun to it, I
oh
will
sure,
say.
oh
Yeah,
sure, captain flag contests are fun. I've never was having enough fun to go to prison, but a lot of fun.
yeah.
Anyway, I got a few other political ones I'll just mention quickly. So this is a new one. Trump went to meet with the Putin to discuss the war in Ukraine, but he didn't bother to bring his own interpreter. He just trusted the Russian interpreter. Like, like he's going to trust the Qatar plane not to be full of bugs and like stuff. It's like I know that's just mind-boggling stupidity. And And speaking of mind-boggling stupidity, RFK Jr. does not believe the germ theory of disease. He doesn't believe vaccines. He doesn't believe you should pasteurize milk. So he took him and his family and his grandchildren to go swim in a sewage-polluted river and posted it because he doesn't believe it's going to hurt him. So,
Wait, are you're serious?
oh yeah, he posted videos of him. They're all because he doesn't think it'll hurt them because you have to be strong. If you're strong, germs won't hurt you. There aren't any really germs anyway. He doesn't believe HIV causes AIDS. He thinks that everything is caused by like vitamin deficiencies or something.
Yeah, that's interesting. I wonder where that thought. He's not the first to come up with that I've heard.
Oh, that goes all the way back. I mean, if you go
Yeah,
to
okay.
ancient Judaism, there's the belief that bad things only happen because you're sinful, and if you're good, God will bless you with good health and wealth and everything. That's a really major
So
heresy
so
in all
this is
major religions.
so this is a biblical or common to religions.
Yeah, and the modern version of it is the manosphere, like Joe Rogan and stuff. Joe Rogan kept saying, don't take a vaccine. If you work out and you're in good shape, that's
Yeah,
what really
okay.
matters. I'm too macho to get sick.
Yeah, right. Right.
Yeah. Anyway, um, uh, so they've invented a new dating app called Ditto. And what this
Okay.
does, they say, the problem with dating apps is you have to look at all the profiles and swipe. And then if you like somebody, you have to send them these messages and go back and forth. And then you have to like go out on a date and see if you like them. And what a total waste of time. AI can do all that for you. What this does is they give you a little questionnaire and then they use AI to run 1,000 possible dates with the other person, creating an AI simulacrum of both of you to figure out which one is compatible. Then they decide to set up the date for you. They don't ask you. They choose the activity, they choose the location, they choose the time, and then they tell you, okay, go here. And here's the topics to talk about too that you should talk about. They save you all that bother of like getting to know people. Just zip right into the last stage.
Hmm.
This is very popular, running at several colleges now. So we'll see how that
Really?
works out. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, we got to see how this works out. That sounds interesting.
Well, well, they said I think half the currently married couples did meet on dating apps now, something like that, half or a third of them or something. So they can run this for a while and see if they get a higher number of marriages. Maybe that's a way to measure success. I'm not sure.
Yeah, there you go.
Yep.
There you go.
And the one I sent you, of course, about Theranos. Uh,
Oh, Sam, this is incredible.
It isn't it? It's like
It
we
is.
are in the stupidest possible timeline where, if you made a movie script like 20 years ago of this real estate guy will be in charge and he'll just openly take bribes and they'll put a guy in charge of the health department that doesn't even believe in germs. I said, no, don't even, you can't make that script. Nobody would watch that movie. That's too stupid.
Sam, you know who is almost on par with this is Barry Minkow. You probably have never heard of him.
No.
In the 80s, he ran a let's see, ZZZZY carpet cleaning service in Southern California. And he essentially he fudged all the invoices, got 7 years in prison,
Yeah.
became a minister, got out, got to San Diego, and he came up with the FDI, the Federal Discovery Institute, while he was pastoring or ministering at a church. And at the same time, he was doing extortion against using YouTube videos to drive stock prices down. His big and this one is unbelievable. He was creating a movie on his life called Mincow, and who did he get to star? Is Barry was Mark Hamill from Star Wars
Oh,
fame.
man. Well, that might be a
So
legitimate job, the movie.
so he was a little short on the money to finish his movie. He had already been making the movie.
Yeah.
And so he went after Lennar Homes, the home builder, which is very big,
Oh,
right? And he's demanding $6 million. And Lennar said, and he said, look, if you don't do it, I'm going to publish these videos. Your stock price will tank. And so they said, no. So Barry said, okay. And he's speaking with Lennar's attorneys, and the attorney said, no, we're not going to pay that. So Barry said, well, how about 3 million?
That's negotiation.
He's negotiated. And then Barry said 2 million. And the attorney said, who negotiates with a terrorist who discounts their price?
Actually, ransomware, this happens all the time.
Yeah, but you discount downward, you're
They
supposed
do.
to.
They totally
Okay,
do.
okay. And anyway, Barry finally offered, was down to $500,000.
Yeah.
And Lennar's attorney said no. So Barry, he did release the videos. Lennar's stock price did decrease for a week by 50%. Barry got arrested and was thrown back in prison. The movie was never made or never completed. It was partially made. I think if you look on MDB, whatever, the movie database,
IMDb, yeah.
yeah, IMDb, thank you, that you'll find Mincow the movie or Mincow in Wikipedia. I'm dying to see the movie.
Yeah.
Never seen pieces of it. Anyway, he's back in prison again.
Yeah.
And I think he got out just before COVID, and we'll have to see where he is today. I have no idea.
Yeah, well, Elizabeth Holmes, it's the same thing.
Yeah,
She
Elizabeth Holmes.
ran this fake blood testing thing, and she went to prison for like 10 or 15 years. And now from her prison cell, she's got her boyfriend to do the same thing
What
again.
husband?
Husband, doing the same thing again. He's got a miracle diagnostic tool that will take a sample of your blood and spit and urine and diagnose all your problems. It's the same scam again.
And he's trying to collect $100 million for it. So Sam, I gotta ask, based on how well Elizabeth did with Theranos,
Yeah,
going from, literally zero money to making a
yeah,
company worth 9 billion.
yeah.
Isn't this kind of like cryptocurrency? Maybe this is the time to invest?
Well, I mean, it would make as much sense as a meme coin to invest in something, even if it's a scam. And by the way, I don't know it's a
Yeah.
scam. I don't think anybody does. I suppose there is a probability slightly greater than zero that they actually have a product this time. But given
No,
their track record, I highly doubt it. I assume it's just
no,
a scam. Yeah.
no. And the reason they can't do it is because of the physics involved in the chemistry.
Yeah, well,
That
the articles I read didn't say how big of a blood sample. I mean, if you actually take a whole vial of blood, you can
oh,
produce
different story.
the miracle
Yeah,
thing from Theranos was they take a tiny little drop of blood and
right.
somehow amplify it. The new one, they also said the new one, they're going to start diagnosing pets and go to humans later. So at least they're a little more careful. But, but it does sound like bogus stuff. I saw another article yesterday. It was good, clean fun. This woman in some other country does fortune telling from coffee grounds. I've heard of it done from tea leaves, but she does it from
Right.
coffee grounds. But she doesn't do it herself. She uses ChatGPT. So she took her husband's coffee grounds, took a photograph, sent it up to ChatGPT for a psychic reading, and ChatGPT said, "Your husband's cheating on you, so she's divorcing him, going to court with this as her evidence." So there you go.
Sam, what we got to do this. We need to open up a business like this.
Well, there's a ton of them. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, there's
yeah.
guys
You
you
know
can
which one?
pay that will promise to like take care of your dog when you go to heaven and stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah. The one I like is if you go to the fair, county fair or some of those events like that. There's computer handwriting analysis.
Yeah.
And if you write your handwriting, so somebody investigated what's the computer, turns out to be a Commodore 16 or a Commodore 64 from what was that, the early
Oh,
1980s
yeah.
that they're still using, same software program.
Yeah. That's how I learned everything. I got one of those and I learned every bit of the hardware and every bit of the language. I programmed in assembly language and machine language. That was a great machine. You could totally learn programming from that thing. And it had a big, thick book. And the one lesson to learn, every single code example in that book was broken and wouldn't run. She had to fix every one of them. It was like a little CTF. First 4 or 5 times I got mad. Then I realized everything is broken, but I'm still learning it.
Yeah,
But not
yeah.
one of the examples would run. And it's like hundreds of pages. And, eventually I found out why. I mean, it was the operating system was written by unpaid high school students.
Is
And
that right?
yeah, that's why I had to buy a piece of hardware. If you would print a page from a word processor from a Commodore 64, the uppercase and lowercase letters were interchanged. And you had to buy a hardware device in the middle to reverse it because the unpaid high school students wrote ASCII that way and nobody at Commodore knew how to fix it. So they just left it that way.
So, Dave's Garage, Dave Plummer, he
Yeah.
originally got his start writing I think it was a disk speed up routine for the Commodore
Oh,
disk
yeah.
drive.
Oh yeah, you could do great stuff.
Yeah.
I figured out how to copy protected games, and the copy protection was they modified the disk firmware, and I figured that out and reversed it. It was very interesting. You could learn a lot from that thing. That was a fun machine. I learned a lot of computing from that.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah.
All right, what's your next story?
Well, you might care about this one. So some guy got tired of like finding chargers for his Tesla. So he took a bunch of solar panels and he covers the whole thing when he parks it. And he claims he can get 30 miles of charge every 8 hours that way. He doesn't need charging stations anymore.
Yeah, wait, Sam, 30 miles in
Yeah.
8 hours?
Yeah.
What, what is that, to the store and back once a day?
Well, I guess if you wanted to like go camping somewhere, you could make that much progress.
Yeah,
Drive
but who
30 miles.
drives 30 miles to go camping unless you're up in, like living in Yosemite?
Well, I don't know.
Or
But anyway, it's an
I believe, let me put it to you this way. I
yeah,
do believe the claim in the summer,
yeah,
but
that's right.
yeah, I don't think it's a solution.
Oh, I don't know if it's like if you ran out of gas and you were stuck somewhere, this would be an
But
answer.
30 miles?
That would get you back to somewhere in civilization where you find a real charger.
Depends where you're at.
That's true. Anyway, all right. So how about this one? Very
All
similar.
right.
A German company has a new way to store electric power from these like what it is a concrete sphere. You make a concrete sphere several meters across and you sink it in the ocean and you pump the water out of it. So it's
Okay.
empty. And then and then you let the water flow back in like a water turbine to get the power back. And they say it works pretty well. And California is going to make a 9 meter sphere, and they are planning 30-meter spheres. They say this is actually a really good way to store power. It sounds pretty good to me.
So we have a 30-meter sphere. How big is that? Let's see.
100
Size
feet
of,
across, a lot of gallons.
yeah, 100 feet across.
You sink it in the ocean. During the daytime, you're on a windmill or solar power or something, and you pump the water out. And at night, you let the water fall back in, turning a turbine or something to get the power back.
Okay.
And I know there's old ones where you just lift a rock and let it fall. I think this is just a practical way to store power, which is what we need, right? As we go to more renewables, we need some way to
Yeah.
store it for the nighttime and when there's no sunlight and all that jazz.
Yeah. So the Tesla batteries
Right.
had a fire in Australia, Melbourne.
Are those the power walls?
Yeah, those are the power walls.
Yeah.
And I believe that burned for three or 5 days
And you need a
to
bunch of
really,
rare earths to make it and stuff.
yeah.
This would be a whole lot better. Or you can only do it near the ocean though.
Yeah, but yeah, well, or any body of water
Right.
for that
Right.
matter. Yeah.
But you could put it
And
next to a power plant, like windmill power plant or something.
yeah, so, and there was also a fire in Santa Cruz. In Moss Beach, there's also a Tesla firewall bank there that
Yeah.
caught on fire.
Yeah, that's right. Those power walls seem to me to have some pretty obvious disadvantages, but of course the advantages, you don't need any fancy equipment or anything. If it works,
Yeah, so Sam, I guess this is a variation of reservoirs where
yeah,
we call it a pump storage, if you
sure.
will.
Yeah, pumping
Uh,
water uphill would be the same thing. Pumping it up to one of those water towers or anything would
Yeah,
work too. Yeah.
yeah. I'd be curious to see how much energy they get out.
Yeah, that's the question is efficiency. Yeah. And
Well, not efficiency, but if you have a sphere that's 100 meters in
that's
diameter,
that's a lot of power, I think.
I would think the opposite. I don't think it's that much power.
Well, that's where you need to know how much it is, and you need to know how efficiently you can get it out.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Anyway, well, how this one's pretty interesting. I heard about this on Pulse Security Weekly a while ago. There's firmware microcode in the processor. Modern
Right.
process. Okay, and you can update and replace that microcode. In fact, I've heard this for like 20 years that there are flaws in like the Pentium 4 and there's microcode updates to fix the flaws.
Okay.
Okay, well, it turns out that the verification process is not very good for that. So you can put malware in the microcode on the processor. And somebody demonstrated this by poisoning a modern processor so the random number generator always produces four. And so the Rapid 7 threat hunter said, well, if you can do that, you could probably put ransomware on it. So he wrote it and developed it. He's not releasing it, but he did make ransomware that infects the microcode inside the processor. And there's no known way to prevent this, no known way to detect it. I think no known way to clean it off. That's pretty scary. And the bad guys are not far behind. You know, the number one target now of attacks is the edge devices, the routers, firewalls,
Yeah.
and VPN concentrators and stuff are getting infected more than the PCs. And they have been, in 2018, they started making UEFI boot kits and they're now bypassing secure boot and embedding malware in the firmware, surviving operating system reboots. And in the 2022 Conti leaks, ransomware gangs are working on firmware ransomware. So,
So, Sam, this is for routers, correct? Or
uh,
routers or peripheral devices?
well, the peripheral devices hacks have been known for like 10 years. You remember when the SolarWinds attack came and the Russian dumped out the stuff from Guccifer 2, I think. The Russians dumped out this stuff. That was NSA's attacks were all against routers and edge devices. It's caught my attention. And now it's the number one way to infect people.
Is going after the routers.
Going after the edge devices. Yeah, not the computers
Yeah.
directly. And
And
that's what I've seen in recent reports. Yeah.
and we're talking home routers, correct?
I think business routers even more. Yeah.
Oh, well, or is it both?
Well, it's both. I know there was a article last week where there's a company that's taking over thousands of old home routers and selling
Yeah.
them as a basically a VPN for criminals.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and
Okay.
that's
Yeah.
been, I mean, taking over home routers has been trivial for a long time because a bunch of them have like default passwords or something.
Yeah. Right. Right.
So
Right.
that kind of thing has
Okay.
been happening for a long time.
So we're talking small business and large or small business, home as well as corporate.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
And so anyway, so that's a new thing to think about. We need to somehow detect if the microcode in your processor has been compromised. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah.
and there's another one that I thought was pretty funny. You know, Elon Musk made his own AI, Grok AI, and he said this is not going to be woke. This is going to have what I regard as the truth, which is what I find on Twitter. So it's going to be full of right-wing disinformation and stuff. Well, it turns out that it's making the customers really mad because it keeps telling them the truth about like the election and vaccines and stuff. They say, what is this crap? Somehow he didn't manage to restrict it to only learn from false sources. Somehow it got trained on real news by accident, and it's telling people stuff they don't want to hear. And it has a warning saying, this is not politically correct. It may offend you. So the right wingers go there expecting it to repeat their stuff. And the way it offends them is by telling them the truth. So, so his AI went out of control and did what he didn't want it to do. Uh,
I see.
yep. And probably the last one I think worth mentioning is this company called Klarna. Klarna is a company that decided to they do like customer service, and they decided to replace everybody with AI. And they found out that this doesn't work at all, like everybody else that tried this. They found out that I think it's tech support. Yeah, in 2023, they said they wanted their company to be the favorite guinea pig. They instituted a hiring freeze and set out to replace as many humans on the payroll as possible with AI. And now he's just until the AI chatbots are handling two-thirds of customer service conversations. And what they found out, surprise, surprise, people that call into a company for customer service are not happy when they get an AI bot. Like, duh. I mean, calling in because your website didn't satisfy them. The last thing they want is another stinking computer that doesn't work. And he found out it can do a bad job of the lowest level of human work. And now they're just hiring more humans again, saying, well, this totally, it occurred to me in practice, you know, people replace human facing customer support roles with AI, which is probably the worst possible thing. The other thing I think about is like Teslas. They try to make self-driving in the city, which is the worst place where you really need a human.
Yeah.
I mean, the logical place to put AI is like long haul trucking, easy driving, and some kind of AI on automated systems that don't touch humans directly. Those are the ones that are reasonable candidates for AI. Where they're deploying them is the place where you actually need real humans, where you're interfacing with a real human or a complex situation. Anyway, um, it's it's kind of funny. Anyway, I think it's all doing just what we all should have expected. I mean, but people keep thinking their AI is going to be as smart as a human. They keep claiming it will be because they made like a psychological test and it's starting to pass those tests as well as a human, but it's not the equal of a human at all, and it probably never will be.
Right. Right.
So every company that gets fooled by that, although the one person that seems to have bought it was the Pope. The Pope said this is why he chose the name Leo, the new Pope, because
What?
Leo the 13th came out in the early days of the Industrial Revolution, and he helped hold human values against the encroaching machine like mechanization crushing the human soul. And he thinks he has the same role with AI. He says now AI is going to crush humans out of the equation, and I'm going to be the humanizing factor, trying to remind people to hold the human values as the machines take over. So he's also apparently, believing all the hype about AI replacing us all, which I think all non-technical people are really falling for this. They think we're going to have the Terminator any day now or Skynet.
Well, I remember hearing that we were definitely going to have self-driving cars
Yeah.
by what, 2019,
Oh yeah.
2020?
Oh, we're supposed to be on Mars by 2020.
Yeah, true.
Self-driving cars by like 2010. And I like Gartner. Gartner puts generative AI already at the peak, about to fall. They say it's not really going to get any better. People are just going to finally admit how much it sucks from here, which I think is very realistic.
Yeah.
They're talking about $400 billion for the next data center to make the next step forward. And yet they're admitting that even if they do spend all that money, there's not enough data to train it on. They've already trained it on all the data in the world, and they need like 10 times more, and there just isn't any more data to use. So I think it really has kind of got as good as it's going to get.
Yeah, well, yeah, at least for some time.
Well, there'll be small improvements from here, but
Yeah, right, right, right.
but everyone's thinking it'll get 10 or 100 times better than this, and then it'll replace all the humans and destroy the world.
Yeah, I don't think so.
No, that's not going to happen. It'll gradually improve from here, and it'll just be another tool like your word processor in your browser in your car. It'll add, a little bit to your life, but it won't revolutionize everything.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah.
right. Well, that's all I wanted to talk about today.
I'm with you. All right, Sam, that's it for me. Is that
Okay.
it for you?
Yeah, well, I think we'll have another one of these on Friday. I'll be in
Thanks.
North Carolina, but I think I can do this before that. We'll see how it
Okay,
goes.
we'll
Okay.
see how that goes.
Okay.
And go digging for that Barry Minkow movie.
Yeah, it sounds like fun. That
Maybe
would
I
make,
should look. I'm gonna look and see where he is.
well, these
Jur-
scammers would make a pretty funny movie if you take a lighthearted attitude towards it. Yeah.
Well, I think he was dead serious.
Yeah,
I
but
think, he's
the
kind of
movie,
like Elizabeth Holmes. Sam, that's it. We need to make a movie on, oh, I guess that's already been
I
done
think they did make a
on
movie of
Elizabeth
Elizabeth
Holmes.
Holmes. I don't know if it was any good, but I think
Yeah,
they
a
made a
couple of
movie.
them.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think
Yeah.
a humorous putting out of these scams would be the way to make a fun movie out of it.
Yeah.
All right. I'm turning it off.